Give you a quick lesson on history. I remember Miss Jenkins gave you a wonderful lesson on who the Nazis literally were in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s. My lesson today will be how the Nazis got into power. So, just so to warm up your brains a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to pause the video when you get a chance. I want you to have a crack at this revision task on the screen right now. So, write up the sentences below, filling in the gaps with the keywords in red at the bottom. The Nazi Party's leader was blank, Hitler, and he believed that the Treaty of blank should be abolished. He also wanted blank, which would give the Germans more living space, which is positive, but also wanted to get rid of the blank and create an Aryan race. So all you're going to need is a sheet of paper and a pen, ladies and gentlemen. Please write down what you think is going to go in each of those gaps. You can pause the video now and give that a go. Okay, so let's see if you got the right idea, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, in that first blank should go the word Adolf. So Adolf Hitler, of course, he was. And he believed that the Treaty of Versailles should be abolished. So it's a treaty that was made at the end of World War One, which a lot of historians credit for the rise of the Nazi Party. He also wanted blank, Lebensraum. So Lebensraum in German, literally, in English rather, literally means living space. So he wanted to acquire as much living space for the German people as possible. And it doesn't matter who was living there, they have to leave, and the Germans get that space instead, which would give the Germans more living space, which is positive, but also wanted to get rid of the Jewish people, the Jews, and create an Aryan race. Of course, a little bit later, it's not just the Jewish people, it's people that the Nazis considered to be genetically weaker or genetically inferior to their Aryan master race. So well done if you got those right, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic work. 1, 2, 3, 4, Adolf, Versailles, Lebensraum, and the Jews. Okay, so let's get on with today's lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I'll be talking to you about how the Nazis got into power and be thinking about what this most significant event was in that. So what are we going to do? We're going to be talking about the rise of the Nazi Party. We're going to be using some contextual information, so a brief bit of reading to help you along the way. Why? To gain a bit of a knowledge and insight into the political situation in Germany at the time, because you can't appreciate why a war starts unless you know the situation on either side of that war. So let's have a quick recap. So I've provided you the link here. This will also be in class charts as well. If you're using your computer, you can simply select all, copy it in, Control C, go to your web browser and to YouTube, Control V into the address bar, and there you go. So while you do that, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like you to do is to be creating a timeline of the information from that video as well, please. Okay, so pause my video here, have a watch of that video, and then get on with a timeline. Okay, so let's recap together, ladies and gentlemen, how Germany got into this dire situation in the first place. First of all, it's worth noting that Hitler was a very charismatic public speaker. He had a very convincing way of speaking, which allowed him to get the German people onto his side. So let's go right back to the beginning of the story, towards the end of World War One. So 1919, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so World War One is finished. Hitler, who participated in the war as a corporal, he joins the German Workers' Party. So it's worth noting at this point that there is a document that's been drawn up at the end of the First World War that the Germans absolutely despise. It is called the Treaty of Versailles, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and it has four main terms. I have many more terms beside that. The four main terms are the fact that it had to give away land. So the land they had to give away was the Rhineland, which is where Germany kept a lot of its factories. So its main way of earning money was through manufacturing. That has now been taken away under the Treaty of Versailles. Another thing that the treaty demanded was Germany reduce its army to 100,000 men only, which sounds like a lot, but if we're talking about a modern nation, that's not very much at all. They also allowed no planes and no submarines. Okay, another key thing about the Treaty of Versailles is that they have to pay reparations. Now, reparations literally just means repayments. Now, that doesn't sound so bad considering the damage done, but this debt was absolutely crippled Germany's economy at the time, and it sent a lot of the Germans into quite a deep poverty, lots of malnutrition and horrible things like that. It said that actually the reparations weren't finished being paid off until the late 80s, the late 1980s. The last term, and possibly the worst of them all, was that Germany had to accept blame for the war. For the war starting. And this really sticks in the throat of a lot of Germans at this time, which gives Hitler perfect political grounds to get a large following. So in 1919, he joins the German Workers' Party. In 1923, he tries to take over government. He is not successful in that. He is unsuccessful, and he spends about 9 months in prison. During that 9 months, he comes up with his book, which is called Mein Kampf, which means my struggle, where he lays out his political ideology for Germany in the future. He also scapegoats, he makes an excuse out of certain minorities in Germany at the time that gains him a lot of popularity with the normal working class Germans. He promises to make Germany great again. Are you hearing any modern parallels, I wonder? Okay, so we fast forward to 1929, which is the Great Depression. The Great Depression means that the stock market crashes, and this leads to huge amounts of unemployment. Again, adding to Hitler's ability to gain followership from the German people. If he says he'll bring them out of unemployment, they're going to support him. Hitler then uses this as an opportunity. Okay, so in 1932, the Nazis win a majority. So that means that there is enough Nazis in government in order for them to make some political change. The first thing they do is they triple the size of the army. They ban other parties so they can do what they like with no consequences. They also ban protests and gathering in public spaces. They also open their own propaganda department, always saying how wonderful Hitler is and that he's going to bring them out of the depression, and make Germany great again. Now, what we're interested in is this time period here. Hitler has already risen to prominence in Germany, but there are some events here that really help him to cement his rule. Okay, so you're probably wondering at this point, what were these events from 1932 to 1933 that really helped Hitler cement his rule? So let's have a look at some of these now. After Hitler secured his power as Chancellor, he still didn't control a majority government. This meant that decisions he tried to make in Parliament could be blocked by other political parties, in particular by the Communists. On the night of 27th of February 1933, events mysteriously occurred that allow Hitler to deal with this threat. The Reichstag, German parliament building, was set on fire and the blame put on a young Dutch communist. Hitler and the Nazis immediately used this to their advantage and set the SA, armed Nazi militants, their personal army, to round up and attack communists. This resulted in the arrest of over 4,000 people and the destruction of communist power in the German government, taking one more opposition piece away from Hitler. 4,000 people arrested and destruction of communist power. So there's even fewer rivals to Hitler's power now at this point, because he's used the Reichstag fire as a scapegoat to demonize and to pursue and to arrest his political opponents. Even with the destruction of the German Communist Party, Hitler could not be certain that he would gain a majority government in the new elections that were to be held on the 5th of March 1933. Hitler devised a new law called the Enabling Act. This would state that in times of crisis, the Chancellor, in this case Hitler, would have dictatorial powers, meaning that he could make decisions and pass laws without needing others in Parliament to agree. So he would have absolute power. Hitler worked quietly with other parties in parliament, and eventually, on the 23rd of March 1933, the Enabling Act was passed, and Hitler gained complete control of Germany that he had so desired. For all the power the Enabling Act gave Hitler, he still felt threatened by some in the Nazi Party. He was also worried that the regular army had not given an oath of allegiance, had not promised their allegiance to him. Hitler knew that the army didn't respect him as he was only a corporal in their eyes. The Knight of the Long Knives not only removed the SA leaders, but also got Hitler the army's promised that he so needed. Got their promises signified by this pinky here. The SA, the Nazis' own semi-military force, had grown to 2 million men, led by Ernst Röhm. Others in the Nazi Party didn't like the power Röhm had and convinced him that he was a threat. Similarly, the army wouldn't support Hitler as they disliked the Nazis having their own military force. So Hitler decided to sort out both problems in one. He told the army that they could have control over the SA so long as the army swore an oath of loyalty to Hitler. Between 29th of June and 2nd of July 1934, the SA leaders were arrested, and at least 77 men were executed, and Röhm himself was shot. This resulted in Hitler's power becoming more secure with the support of both the SA and the German army. Okay, ladies and gentlemen watching, this is where I'm going to hand over the baton to you. This is when you're going to start producing some independent work. So this sheet that you're seeing on the screen now, this can be found on Class Charts. If you open up the holiday workbook, the World War II Year 8 workbook, and go to Lesson 2, you'll be able to find this work in there. Similarly, if you don't have access to that, you can simply recreate this on a sheet of paper using a ruler and a pen. We're going to need 3 rows: the Reichstag fire, the Enabling Act, the Knight of the Long Knives, and we're going to need 5 columns: one for the event, what happened and when was it, what did this lead to, why did this increase Hitler's power, and how legitimate was this increase in power. So legitimate means how fair was it? Did Hitler get it in a legal way? So in this first box, all I'd like from you, ladies and gentlemen, is for you to summarize each of the events that happened. So what happened during the Reichstag fire, what happened during the Enabling Act, and what happened during the Night of the Long Knives. In the column over, the one I'm pointing at now, what did this lead to? So what happened as a result of this first action? This column here, how and why did this increase Hitler's power? So think about the event, think about what it led to, and then why did that lead to Hitler gaining more power? Going to do that for all 3 of these, and then you can look at this final column here. So how legitimate, how fair, how legal was this increase in power? I appreciate the information for this is on the previous few slides of my presentation, but you can rewind the video to when I was talking you through those slides. You can pause it, and then you can use the information on each slide to complete this task. You'll only really need the information from the PowerPoint in that first column. The remaining 3 columns after that are down to you and your independent work and your skills of interpretation. Okay, so we've done some revision at the beginning of the lesson, we presented some new information, and we've done a task on it as well, getting all the information into one place onto one sheet. So this is where we'll put together all of that, synthesize all of that information that we've been doing in today's lesson and put it down into an extended piece of writing. What I'd like you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Write an account, a story of how it happened, of how Hitler gained his power. Explain what the key events were and how they led to Hitler gaining more power. So in essence, ladies and gentlemen, what you're doing is you're using the information from these first 3 columns. This what happened and when was it, what did this lead to, and why did this increase Hitler's power? And you're going to join those 3 boxes together into a paragraph each, explaining each of these events and how they added to Hitler's increased power. So that is your first apply to demonstrate task. The second task will be for you to create a poster of the 3 events that lead to Hitler becoming Führer. Again, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 3 events that we've been talking about in today's lesson: the Reichstag fire, the Enabling Act, and the Night of the Long Knives. Having said that, I think that's probably the end of you can breathe a sigh of relief. That's probably the end of me talking now. What I'd like you to do is that if you have produced any work, you can do one of 2 things. If you've done it on your computer, you can email it to one of your teachers. So that could be me, Mr. Windsor, Mr. Barlow, that could be Mr. Anand Shaw, Miss Jenkins, or any other teacher that teaches you as well. If you haven't written it on a Word document, that is okay as well. If you've done it by hand on a sheet of paper, take a photograph of it, attach it to an email, and send it to us regardless. We will endeavour and do the best we can to get you some feedback on that task as well, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's been a pleasure taking you through this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a lovely rest of the isolation until next time I do a lesson for you guys. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.